Captain James Tiberius Kirk will be born, hence the statue immortalizing him grappling with his most accursed nemesis.
Ricardo Montalban?
Genetically engineered tyrant Khan.
Doesn't look like either of them.
Thank you for pointing that out. That is because the whores at Viacom International threatened to sue us if we use their likenesses, so we make do. Yes, the gentleman in the beige.
I was wondering, what did Sulu find in Captain Kirk's lavatory?
Sulu clearly found a standard issue Starfleet Z-23 personal refuse device.
I believe it was a captain's log.
Very good. A laugh a day, keep the doctor away, everyone. We've been saved. Ooh, any other comic relief? Ah! They're still homeless out there.
Hey!
Yes, what? You? What? Yes.
What is the Klingon translation for "you're gonna die a virgin"?
Rachsilmanto. Yep, that's what, okay. Hilarious, everyone. Looks like we got more Lucas hounds here to mock Roddenberry. Congratulations, gentlemen, but I would like to see your Darth Vader take on one Borg drone. We'll see who's laughing then, am I right?
Darth Vader could put the entire Borg collective in a vice grip with his mind.
Darth Vader has asthma, so name me one Star Trek character with a respiratory disease, because I'm drawing a blank.
Name me one Star Wars character who's gay.
Yeah.
Besides you.
Well, I know it's gay in Star Trek, so why would I even do that?
Captain Picard.
Okay, Captain Picard is not gay, he's British.
Come on, make it so.
Well, I hate to break it to you losers, but Han Solo's a bitch.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry, what did you just say?
Is there a problem here?
Yeah, there sure is, Spock. The Admiral here just called Han Solo a bitch.
Good one.
It's pretty strong words for a Trekkie.
Okay, well, Trekkie is derogatory at this point in the game. Trekker is what we're called now. Trekker.
Oh, sorry. Trekkie.
Let's just take a look, see.
What's with the man purse?
Yeah. As I thought, scanner reads douchebag.
Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to GeekFest Rants. My name is Carlos Perron, and I am sitting here with James. Say hello, James.
Hello, hello.
Today, we are going to explore a subject that is kind of broad in terms of how many directions and how wide we can take it. And it's a subject that applies, obviously, directly to just about everything we talk about in this show, and that is fandom. You know, a lot of people, consider themselves fanboys, and sometimes that's not a positive term. Sometimes some people make it a positive term. But we're going to talk about how individual fandoms manifest with different people in different ways, not just with things having to do with sci-fi and toys and movies and stuff like that, but how the phenomena of fanboys and preferences and hobbies is treated by different people in different situations. So let's start off a little bit with what we know because we have experience in this, and that is the geek nerd culture. The things we talk about, whether it's movies or toy collecting and stuff like that. James, now tell me a little bit about, because we've had this conversation before, and I know we have different opinions of, let's start off with something like toys. We are collectors in somewhat different ways, and we kind of set up different rules of how we collect things, but we kind of have, I would say, different point of views in terms of, what is a reasonable manner of collecting or a reasonable manner of calling yourself a collector, for example. Tell me about your particular view.
I feel like I was a collector a little bit before it became fashionable to say, hey, I'm a collector. I bought all the original Star Wars toys as early as the Early Bird set. But after maybe only a year, I stopped opening my sets. And I realized, hey, I think the moment that hit me, I was about to throw away some boxes from, say, like the Millennium Falcon, some of the bigger boxes. And my dad said, yeah, let's get rid of these. They're taking up space. And I was looking when he had them in a pile, and I said, something about this just wrong. And that was the switch, and I became a toy collector, as well as a Hot Wheel collector, as well as a poster collector, the one-sheets. magazines, other paraphernalia, obviously related to Star Wars specifically, but also venturing into James Bond, Raiders of the Lost Ark, other Lucasfilm, those kind of things. Again, Hot Wheels. I still have the Hot Wheels from the late 60s, early 70s. What I think happened is it gave me something else above just playing with toys. You know, we still had toys. We had other toys we played with, but the Star Wars toys became something special. I had them all. I took care of them. I, had them in their boxes. There really wasn't a collection back then. That's what people did. They had toys and they played with them. I could call myself, I collect Star Wars toys. Yeah, people knew that. But other people weren't saying that. You got your toys. It didn't kick into being a collection to other people till maybe the middle 80s when Jedi had come and gone. The Star Wars toys were winding down in the shops, but I was still buying them. And I realized there were other series coming out. G.I. Joe was now coming out. So there were G.I. Joe collectors. They were around since the 60s. There were Barbie collectors. I wound up working at Toys R Us. I'd see people come in and start buying things like we see now, people going into shops, adults. It wasn't just parents coming in to buy stuff. Guys were coming in. Some respectable guys, some creepy guys. Then there were some people coming in, there were strawberry shortcakes. They would buy everything. There was He-Man. They would buy everything. And I think that's how I saw collections being formed in other people. I started to see, this guy is this person is that. Now, you can't lump everybody in, but I'm just saying the people I would encounter with. And while there was no internet back then, I had this weird form of internet, and I think they were called bulletin boards, or I'm not really sure exactly what it was called anymore, but I was able to get online, so to speak, and I found people selling or trading other Star Wars toys or other Star Wars paraphernalia. I met up with people to get like Revenge of the Jedi stuff, which was kind of hard to find, blah, blah, blah. And it grew from there. Now, I wasn't a weirdo. I mean, I might have been a weirdo as a human being, but I wasn't a weirdo because people just had that kind of stuff. You'd buy stuff, movie fans, stuff like that. What I did notice, though, when I was a fan of Doctor Who pretty darn quick in the late 70s, and nobody knew what that was. Maybe I'd meet one other person, and usually it was like an older person who came across it. But most other kids didn't really know. They thought it was just some weird show that was on Saturday mornings or Saturday nights by me. And that was my own special little thing. My brother eventually got into it, but that was when I was like the outsider as a fan. My fandom kept me separated in a cool way in my mind because I had that little something extra. Everybody else was a Star Wars fan or a sports fan or something, but I had Doctor Who and nobody else really did.
Well, that's one of the, I think, key characteristics, especially with sci-fi genre fans, is that there's a bonus feature or an added bonus worth when you are into something that is very obscure, even within sci-fi or whatever your genre.
But not deviant.
Right, not crazy like deviant.
But that's exactly right. And I was a young teen back then, and people want to feel special. People want to feel like they're different. Well, how are you different? Well, I like this.
Well, that's the thing.
Is this weird? No, this is nice.
Right, but when you find something in your particular case at that particular period in time, like Doctor Who, that wasn't very accessible to everybody, that is something very special when people grab onto that. But it also gets to the point sometimes where it's almost like a anti-poser type of thing, where if something becomes a little too popular, it kind of loses its shine.
It's funny you use anti. I was thinking it's a little bit antisocial in a way because you want to be separate from other people. And I noticed that because I was also a big fan. And
a hipster.
Well, hipster's a more modern word, but I was very much into music. And I think at the time, say, around the late 70s when all this is happening, disco is very popular. Punk is around, which I actually liked more. I like disco, I like the Bee Gees, but I actually liked punk stuff and didn't know it. I just knew I heard these songs, which eventually got me into new wave and 80s type music, Duran Duran, Depeche Mode, David Bowie I had always liked. So while everybody's listening to whatever the mainstream is, I always felt I was just slightly off kilter. And I found out from other people that there is an element of that. And for instance, for music now, people liked REM. REM was like, an Athens, Georgia college scene kind of not really known. But if you did know them and you'd heard them,
you're part of the club.
You were kind of cool and you could hang out with these other kind of cool people, not just these regular people. And then they started to get big as the 80s progressed. 85, 86, 87, they really started to hit. And some of these people that I was friendly with who like that kind of music, the indie, the alternate type of stuff, as they call it now, then it didn't really have that much of a name. They were getting angry, like almost to the point where like we're not even that much into REM anymore because now everybody was into it. Now Doctor Who didn't get that way until maybe 2010, around the David Tennant time, because Eccleston.
That's when it exploded here.
Eccleston was around and he did his year, but in America, I got it because of people going on and getting it on through the internet through BBC, but it didn't air here until maybe 2010, I think, on Sci-Fi. And then when Tennant kicked in, it blew people's mind. It started to air on Sci-Fi and then eventually BBC America and blah, blah, blah. It exploded. Now, I don't have any feelings of... I'm excited when somebody say they're a Doctor Who fan, especially a younger person who, I've been liking this for years and they're finally catching it and they tell me, oh yeah, I love Doctor Who. It's like, it's neat when you realize something that's been around for 50 years and some kid can pick it up now and it's accessible, and then they get blown away when they hear there's more Doctors.
Well, like I said, especially I think with sci-fi fans, we kind of get this sense of ownership of something, especially the rarer it is, the less people that are into it, you start to feel like you own it. You know, it's your property. And this happens all the time with it's sometimes it's called nerd rage, where, a certain franchise will decide they want to do something with a character or a storyline, and the fans get so outraged, like beyond control outrage, and it's like, whoa, wait a second, hold on a second, let's kind of take it back a step here. And it's like, you don't own this movie.
Well, I don't think you are as much of a comic book fan as I and some of the other guys on the different shows we do, but you did like some comics. But the funny thing is now it's such a cool feeling when Spider-Man and X-Men and Iron Man and Hulk and all these guys are huge. I mean, you would think these guys, to some people who are little, like
they invented them today,
between 5 and 10, they don't know that we've lived through. I mean, as a comic book fan, there's another thing. Even the middle 70s, as a comic book fan, boy, you were almost like the dork kid if you talk too much about comic books. You could like the Mego figures and you could like them around the other kids, but if you talked about them too much or you knew too much, man, it's like, oh, all you do is read comic books?
Well, let me ask you a question. This kind of brings us into this topic, and that is, how is it, or how do you show your nerd freak flag?
I never show it at all. It was a secret a lot of times.
With people, is it a quiet thing? Is it a secret thing? Or
not
or you just kind of let it all out there go?
Well, the funny thing is, and I've heard other people talk about it in the media, Howard Stern has talked about it because he was a huge Superman and comic book fan growing up, and he's noticed how he still makes fun of people who go to conventions and stuff. But I've noticed now comic books, sports, movies, Doctor Who, cartoons, anime, like all this kind of stuff. I had so many little niches that I was into Japanese animation because of Star Blazers and Battle of the Planets, and then I found other things, and I actually watched the Japanese versions back then. If you could get a disc, a disc, that's crazy talk. VHS. If you can get a VHS or something, or it was on late at night like a heavy metal movie was or something, which was a little out there for a younger kid. But back to sports. Now, there were people who were sports fans when I was a kid who knew every guy, everything. Now, I knew people. I knew the stuff you'd see on TV. You generally knew the Dallas Cowboys. I was a huge Yankee fan. I liked Notre Dame was a football team that would get airplay on Saturdays. And this guy named Joe Montana wound up winning a big game, blah, blah, blah. Well, I like the name Joe Montana. I know that name now. He becomes a 49er. I gravitate to the 49ers. How that happens, I mean, it's just fate, I guess, the people you like or the things you like. But then you notice there's other people, it's like, well, we only like the Giants, the Giants, the Giants, the Giants. Or, the Yankee fans, F the Mets, And it's like, well, as a sci-fi, we talk about sci-fi on this site. We talk about movies. We try to keep it general to invite as many people to join us in our passions. But we do break it down to little niches.
But
sometimes.
Naturally, when it comes to some, if you look at the arts in general, sports. I don't know if you can consider sports to be a sort of art form,
but you would be
or politics. But sci-fi, fantasy, horror, all that stuff is theoretically one of the most open communities where everybody's allowed in. But even within it, you have factions.
But now it's balkanized now, if anybody even knows that word. You have to look that up, the little geopolitics. But you entered a lot of your, formative years as an outsider, but became an insider because of how much you could communicate. I like Star Wars, whatever, and even through a language barrier. But you never picked up sports. You never got into other than soccer or whatever, or football internationally. There were a lot of people who couldn't care less that I know about sci-fi, Doctor Who, Star Wars, or anything like that, but knew everything about every player, hockey, basketball. They'd watch every sports. They'd watch
With
college
the same
sports.
intensity as anything else.
ESPN started out, they used to have darts, and people would be gambling on darts and highlight and stuff like that.
But let me just tell you something. If you watch TV, and not so much now, but years ago when they portrayed your typical fanboy, sci-fi fanboy.
Like the Star Trek skit.
They would show you, they would show you a
Shatner
convention,
Star Trek skit.
and they would show you guys dressed up as Klingons or Vulcans or whatever.
Can you tell me about episode 16?
But here's the thing. Let me ask you a question. How is that any different than if you see a picture of some guy in a football game completely body painted with a big 6 on his chest or something, or in a political arena, you have a political convention
holding up signs.
And you have like an Uncle Sam or some caricature of characters.
It's crazy. I've been to conventions. Used to watch them on TV. I like Ike, or this, that, and the other thing. And the bad side was like during the '60s when there were like riots and stuff around the conventions.
They're completely into certain characters, and they're obsessed.
And I think now it's become more free to let your flag fly, as they say. On the other hand, people have gotten more protective. As more people join, there's an element of like, hey, I've been here a long time, back off. And then there's this other element of disparaging people who, for some reason, are just like you, but they present themselves a different way. Maybe they wear a costume. Like I've heard stories about women who go to these conventions, like Comic-Con, in the cosplay outfits. Now, most of them are really hot. But I've heard there's stories of people that, like, they get their asses grabbed and stuff like that. And it's like, geez, why would you do that? That's something some dirtbag on the street would do, some girl passing by, like maybe a job site or in a dark night on a street. This is somebody just like you who loves whatever it is they love so much, and you're disrespecting them like that. Now, again, I'm no hippie. I'm no like bleeding heart, but this is the place where you're supposed to feel welcome. This is like church. You go to church and you love Jesus, or you love, whoever you love. Until
the hour is over and you walk on the street.
But the guy singing too loudly, everybody's like, oh, that guy, he's like, who's he trying to impress? You know what I mean? The Holy Ghost could hear him. But
it's called human nature.
But what I'm saying is, Comic-Con, for instance, New York Comic-Con, especially San Diego Comic-Con, that's like going in an audience with the Pope if you go to San Diego Comic-Con. You know what I mean?
The Pope Stan Lee?
St. Peter, St. Stan Lee might show up and
Stan Lee
give you
the
a blessing. No, or St. William Shatner will come in for $500, bless your child.
The sign of the Shat.
The funny thing is, though, there are people there who are like down on other people, or disrespectful, or like I remember the funny thing is we went to a comic show. They used to call them comic book shows back then. Now they're Comic-Cons.
Everybody's a Comic-Con now.
But they were more separate and smaller. But there was a big one every year around the Thanksgiving weekend in New York, and it was usually at the New York Hotel.
Creation, Penta or Roosevelt,
Penn
or something.
Hotel. It's changed names a couple of years. It might even change hotels a little bit. They may even still have it, actually. Okay, so we go there, and a friend of mine, he used to go. He worked his way back to get as many. He may have gotten all the Spider-Mans by now, but he was working his way back, and he was in like the double digits, like the 30s, the 20s, that ballpark. And they were very expensive. So he would usually go and get 10 comics at these events, because some of them were hundreds of dollars. And we're looking at these comics and stuff, and there's some people taking them, like stealing them. And I'm like, we're saying to ourselves, we are fans of these heroes and guys fighting for truth and justice, and there's some jerk stealing from a guy selling them at the comic show. It's like, why would you do that? Why do you even read comics then? What are you in? Are you gonna steal them? Then it ventures into this dark side. Now it's eBay, people buying stuff and jacking them up because it's rare, or stealing, or disrespecting each other. Like, there's a time when we found the internet and we found Dark Horizons and Ain't It Cool.
But that's the thing, the internet opened up the floodgates.
And then Ain't It Cool suddenly turned into this like Thunderdome. And if you said you like something, George Lucas raped my childhood, screw him, he's the devil. And so it's this element of seediness.
But that comes with
appears.
the internet. That's
Yeah.
part of the
Kevin
influence
Smith
of the
made fun
internet.
of it in a way, and I mean, he may even be part of it. You don't know what the chicken and the egg anymore, but yeah, it's the internet, and I think it's this element of like, oh, well, my team is better than your team, and I like Doctor Who, and you like that crap or whatever.
Well,
so
there's
you're
the
a
Star
jerk.
Wars versus Star Trek feud always.
And it happens in sports: Yankees versus Mets, Yankees versus Red Sox, Giants versus Cowboys. There's music, Beatles, Rolling Stones, this, that, the other thing. We could go down forever. It's a time where people can be who they want to be, but it's also a time where people are more like, us versus them. And you see that in the most recent weird thing that may or may not be too weird, depending on your likes. But there's a show called My Little Pony Friendship is Love that used to be a kid's show, apparently, but now there's like adults into it. And I've read more about it. It's to me, it's a little weird, I'm sorry to say, and I'm playing into this whole thing. It's a little strange that
As I sit here surrounded by stuffed animals, you're saying it's weird.
it's Tigger. Give him a break. I don't think I could go dressed up as a pony. And I've heard that the actual conventions are very nice places and people are very friendly usually, but you've got guys dressing up as the pony, you've got guys sexualizing the pony. So then it crosses that line. Now we've seen things on the internet that are kind of weird. When you look up something, say your daughter likes Ahsoka, and you look up something on the internet for her or something like that, and imagine the things you found. Now, you don't have to agree, but I know you can see some weird stuff out there. That's where it's like, okay, you're a grown man, but be respectful of the other people out there or something, that, they still might be kids. Let them have their childhood.
Now, let's look at some examples of what we would be considered going a little overboard. And to you, like
well,
you just said,
and I have gone overboard in certain cases.
well, but like
and
you just said,
sitting around
the whole brony thing might be tippy-toeing a little over the line, but when you let your fandom not only become part of your personality, but it becomes your only personality, that's, I think, when you get a little trouble.
Perhaps you lose reality.
Now, one example.
You don't like reality.
One example
Reality's not fun.
I can remember from maybe 10 years ago was this lady, the Star Trek lady, who worked at a copy machine place or something, and she would insist.
Are you talking about from the documentary?
Yeah.
I think it was a dentist office or something.
Something like,
no, she worked in like a warehouse kind of
right,
situation.
and
but
she
there was
would
a dentist, like the same thing.
And they would let her because she insisted on dressing up as
she would dress
on
like
uniform,
a Starfleet officer
on Next
and call
Generation
herself
uniform,
a Starfleet officer.
And then at one point she got called into jury duty, and I believe she shows up in jury duty in Starfleet uniform again.
Yeah. And she identifies herself as like a commander or a lieutenant or whatever.
And a lot of people kind of went along with her to kind of, she's not harming anyone. She's a little strange.
Did she get a case?
But I don't remember exactly what happened to her. But okay, I think we could kind of say that that's going a little too far when your entire personality and your entire life now revolves around one specific thing.
Well, every day is Halloween now for some people as adults. It used to be you'd go to like a party or you'd go to a convention around Halloween or something like that. It was okay to dress up. But now you could have people, and I'm guilty of it too. I've bought a Doctor Who leather jacket from Eccleston. I've bought a Capaldi wool Crombie coat. They're not cheap. As you said, you're surrounded by Legos. 4-foot sock monkey, Tigger. I mean, what is the line?
But again,
I think the line is: can you
function?
Can you still show up to your job in a normal manner?
Right. But my question is, you're not showing up.
Adults
You're not showing up to your job or wherever the hell you go
in Doctor Who garb.
In Doctor Who garb with all these stuffed animals under your arm.
Well, they're in my car.
You're not helping me make this point, James. There's got to be, I think, a line where you can interact in public with the majority of people you're with without having to dip into your fandom.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that woman doing what she did, but that is what's considered still odd. If you're in your real life, now when Comic-Con shows up and you want to do your thing.
Oh, yeah, go nuts.
But there is a lot more leeway because it used to be you would not be a man working in an office or a lady working in an office wearing certain outfits. Now you can show up wearing a Captain America logo, little logo shirt instead of a polo, horse. You can have a TARDIS on your desk. You can have some Star Trek or Star Wars figures or a phaser in your, on your shelf.
In your cubicle.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's become more acceptable, especially people of our age. I'm sure people our parents' age
Right. They might
are
have
still a little
plant
weird about it.
and a calendar.
But they might have had John Wayne. They might have a calendar
Or the
of John Wayne or
Beatles.
Clint Eastwood,
Yeah.
or something like that. Or people older than that might have had General Patton,
Roy
you know,
Rogers.
Yeah, exactly.
The Lone Ranger.
So it's nothing new. It's definitely nothing new. Like they'll get Ralphie from A Christmas Story. Wanted that Red Ryder BB gun, and he was a big fan of whatever that radio show he listened to and stuff like that. So it's like this has gone on for ages. People, Mozart. I mean, you watch the Amadeus movie. People used to follow him around like he was a rock star and were fans. And if he signed a piece of paper or he touched them or something like that, so it's nothing new. It's become more acceptable,
But the
it's
problem-
also become more balkanized, where people hurt each other a little bit.
The problem also comes along that when you do go over the top, when you do let it take over your life, and when you do let it become your personality, the way that people identify you is by you're that guy, you're the Star Trek guy, you're the Star Wars, you're whatever guy, that's when you kind of start to kind of lose control of it, and then you become the stereotypical person that people that are not into it associate that genre with. So you become, if somebody's not into sci-fi, sci-fi is full of those weirdos that are doing this
Yeah.
or that, and it's like you get all lumped into one group. But let's talk about that. This isn't something, in my opinion, that is only applies to the sci-fi community. Like you mentioned before, you have guys who are 100% sports 100% of the time. You have people that are 100% political, 100% of the
Yeah.
time. People
And
that
that's how they get identified. It's like, oh, I hate Obama, or I hate Bush, or I hate, Richard Nixon, or whomever. And it's like, wow. Every time you see them, they've got a sticker on their car, or they've got a shirt, or they've got like a new joke, or they're
but it's
emailing
a difference
you stuff.
between, just like in sci-fi, you might be very political in terms of you might have very strong political opinions, and you should know, just like in sci-fi, when to bring those opinions into a conversation. But if you walk into a room with a flag that says "I hate so and so," and your car is plastered with "I
You're
hate
either
so and so"
instantly
stickers,
alienating a lot of the room, or you're instantly aligning with yourself. But it's not really. That's who you are. You're
But
not
that's-
just a regular. You're
but I
not just
think-
a person who has these
no
tastes.
but I think that's even more dangerous because, and again, when it comes to politics or religion or social related issues, if you walk into a room and you don't have to open up your mouth, and people can already tell by reading your T-shirt, your car stickers, what you stand for, you are automatically declaring
Stereotyped.
war at people. You're saying, here's the line, come at me. And that is a super dangerous platform to be, carrying around with you everywhere you go. You're openly challenging people to engage.
And fights do break out that way. If a guy who happens to like the Jets on a certain Sunday has a flag out in front of his house, or his mailbox is
Yeah.
a Jets mailbox,
How do you-
and the Jets just happen to be playing the Eagles, and he lives near a lot of Eagles fans, they might come around a baseball bat and hit his mailbox or steal his flag.
But let me ask you a question. Obviously, who do you blame in a situation like that? That's kind of like this whole victim thing in terms of like, do you walk into a Yankee bar wearing a Red Sox shirt?
Well, I
Are
generally
you,
won't.
Are you legally allowed? Yes, of course you're legally allowed. But are you putting yourself in danger on purpose?
Yeah, why do that? And I've gone to other stadiums. I'm a Yankee fan, but I've gone to Fenway Park. It's a beautiful stadium. I have a great time. In fact, I think I like hanging out there sometimes more than Yankee Stadium. But I don't go in and say, hey, I'm a Yankee fan, and pee on the seats. You know what I mean? I go in and I'm respectful. I wear normal clothes. I don't wear a Red Sox hat or anything and jump teams. But what I'm saying is I go there. I'm an invited guest, basically, in this stadium. Thanks for having me. And I try to have as good a time as everybody else is having in that environment. I don't try to bring
But let me ask you a question.
my beliefs.
If you're
and-
going into this opposing team's home,
Yeah.
let's say, does that automatically mean you're going to have to put up with more crap
Yes.
than they are?
Yes, I
because
think it
you're in
does.
their home.
If I go to your house and you happen to like Star Trek more than Star Wars, I don't come into your house and say, F Mr. Spock, Han Solo's the man, and and stuff. And then we have an argument, and maybe you laugh it off, or maybe you toss my ass out the door. What's the point? You've invited me into your home. I go in there and I say, wow, Carlos has a lot of Star Trek stuff, or Carlos has a lot of Giant stuff, or whatever it happens to be you're into. I think that's the polite way to do it. The same way, look,
What if you walk into a house and it's all
Sports-
My Little Pony stuff,
oh,
James?
well, hey,
Huh?
man, that's
What do you do then?
You've kept that room secret. There's a padlock, and I'm not welcome. But look, sports rivalries are the clearest even more than Star Wars, Star Trek type of nonsense. If there's a big game, obviously everybody's invited. Most of the time, it's going to be dominated by the home team's crowd. Why would you go in? You support your team. God bless you and all. I'm not saying that. Why would you go in to antagonize? And there are people that went out and there's alcohol involved. Maybe there's drugs involved. People are getting wound up before the game and parties and stuff. Why would you want to put yourself in a position where, there's guys who have died or been severely beaten in other team stadiums because they wore. Now, that doesn't mean if you do wear a Red Sox hat in a Yankee stadium, you should get your ass beat. On the other hand, if you're wearing the Red Sox hat and then go, hey, F you, Yankees, that guy, so just hit a home run and screw you. There are going to be guys who get fired up and you're going to have a fight.
Can you picture or could you imagine situations like that on a genre level in terms of people being that nuts about
yes, I haven't seen it, but
other than the internet, because again, on the internet, everybody's super brave and everybody is a big man.
You're sitting behind your typewriter.
But in person, come on, well, you don't have that keyboard in front of you. It's a whole other issue. And because usually there's no game when it comes to sci-fi, it's usually the big gatherings are conventions, and conventions are usually so wide that you have everything.
The closest thing that you get to that now is these panels have become so exclusive in a way that you can get a panel of all the Avengers show up. And that'll probably happen in the next couple months or someplace when they start pushing this Age of Ultron. And I think you guys saw it for the last Avengers movie. You'll have so many people who want to get in that they suddenly want to fight each other. Your fellow fans, your fellow nerd, your fellow dork, whatever you are in the outside world, here, game on. We're going for it. It's Thunderdome. I'm getting in there. I'm going to get a seat. I want a good seat. And if I have to knock you and your grandma down, and you've seen that happen, right?
I have not seen
I'm
full-blown
exaggerating.
riots happen, but I could see how the situations get built, that you create so much anticipation and you create so much, secret clubs, or not secret clubs, but like only the people in the know get to go to the certain things and certain events if you know somebody, or if you pay X amount of money,
front row,
all of a sudden you're creating this caste system almost of, here's the VIPs, and here's the rest of you. And this is something that goes,
and that's because there's money to be made. And if there's any way we can separate more money from your wallet, they'll do it. And that is the caste system you're explaining. William Shatner will spend an afternoon, well, I wouldn't call it an afternoon. He'll spend a few moments of quality time with you.
$450.
For an extra portion of money. And for that, you will be able to get a picture and a signature and, and move on.
What I'm finding a slightly rare phenomenon nowadays, and this is especially since we do a podcast, I'm aware of other podcasters and I'm aware of other shows, is that even within this whole realm of nerddom, the people that are considered to be hierarchy in the nerd world.
Oh, it's funny you brought that up because I'm thinking it.
And I'm not even talking about the ones that are actually making money and that are pseudo famous in terms of shows like The Nerdist or shows that are like Big Bang Theory, things that are out there in front of everyone to stare at. But I'm talking about even within the podcasting community, the fan groups I'm talking about, that, and even if you go even lower in terms of, especially even in Star Wars, whether it's Toy Star Wars News, Star Wars related, any of these little subgroups that have their own podcast.
They're better, or we're cooler.
They all seem a lot of them seem to have this kind of like a Letterman versus Carson versus Leno mentality where, we don't talk about these guys and these guys don't talk about us, and we don't like to kind of share guests. And it's like, my God, this is a bunch of nerds theorizing about fiction material, but they're acting like a full-blown television network in terms of, number one, part of the problem is the fact that some of them are chosen. They're anointed to have access to certain things.
There's jealousies, I'm sure.
Lucasfilm throws a lot of these people a couple of crumbs, and all of a sudden they become the place to be and the place to go.
Are you going to change?
I have no access to anything.
Stay down to earth, man.
So I'm keeping it real.
Change, man.
But I do notice that it's like, and again, it's incredible. I guess it's human nature. You give somebody a little bit of the taste of something good, and then they're game on.
We've mentioned it a number of times. We were and I still am. I go every day, maybe twice a day, to Ain't It Cool. But I've noticed now a backlash on Ain't It Cool against Harry. Apparently, people are mad at Harry for whatever various things they're mad at. I don't even care.
Well, we read that article, though, of the history of the show, which I had no clue about the history of the show.
I don't care. it provides a lot of good reading. It provides us information. And if he's got some other peccadillos going on, that's between him and his God. You know what I mean? But the same thing you mentioned about the anointed ones. It will annoy me slightly. And this doesn't involve Harry.
Well, first let's talk about G4.
Well, yeah, G4 was a cool channel. Here's where it went down. Olivia Munn was everybody's favorite. Hot as hell. Willing to do just about anything. In fact, willing to put on the Leia slave outfit to, show how great
of a fan
how much of a fan she was. And again, with a body like hers, she wasn't hurting anybody.
In a room full of nerds, you're going to get attention.
But then as time went on, it turns out it was an opportunity for her, and she may be a fan, but it just seems like, better waters are coming.
No, but not only that, but it was a bit of an acting job, too.
Well, I didn't know that at the time, and I thought it was a cool network, and I thought it was fun to watch this stuff. And yeah, and she moved on. And I feel another one who's similar to this is this Chris Hardwick. Okay, a few years ago, I'm a stand-up comic, I think. A few years after that, well, I'm a entertainment host trying to be like a Ryan Seacrest. And then, now I'm the biggest Doctor Who fan in the world, and I'm the biggest this fan and that fan and The Walking Dead. Now, I don't know, and please be clear if anybody's listening, I don't know what he's into. But it just seems like it comes across as a little opportunism rather than, no, I was there, I watched it, and that makes me the same way as these other people pointing the finger and saying, I'm cooler. Nope, not trying to be like that at all. I want everybody to be in it because the more people into it, the longer it sticks around.
What I'm finding is that whenever you dig deep into whatever it is, whether it's something as high profile as some of these shows, these G4s, Nerdist, all these other things, television shows, even if you go down a few notches of, like I said before, these fan-made, fan-run organizations, you really don't want to see how the sausage is made.
No, it's best to just enjoy yourself and listen a little bit.
Because everything I'm finding is that everything is exactly the same. There's all kinds of political BS and who backstabbed who, and this guy doesn't give me credit, and that guy doesn't deserve this, and this guy's a phony, this guy's a poser, this guy's this. It is just staggering how your imagination is shattered when you really see how things are run.
Well, even on this organization, because it's not just a website, GeekFest Rants, you explained to me you just want to be able to talk about the stuff you like, and you don't want any of the nonsense. You're not looking to have an argument. If one guy likes talking about the Hulk, you'll have a fantastic conversation with him. And if I don't like the Hulk, but I want to talk about Doctor Who, well, you'll have another conversation with me, and that's why we try to, have all kinds of crazy stuff. So I think
now the second we get famous,
and all
second we get famous, F you.
Yeah, like I said, kumbaya and everybody that's hold hands and stuff like that.
I'm calling Olivia Munn.
But if you get famous, she might answer. But the whole thing is, it's like, it's supposed to be stuff we like, and if you wind up getting all worked up over it, it takes away that charm, that fun. And I think sometimes there are elements of the fandom that do get worked up, and then it's us versus them, and let's get our torches and pitchforks and go after them because our point of view is better. And, sometimes we get people listening, and they know more than us. Yeah. And we'll tell you right away.
Oops.
Most of the stuff we know is from memory, and memories aren't always that clear. A lot of other things we are very passionate about, and we've watched every episode or listened to everything.
We're no spring chickens.
Yeah. And so when people can hear us and say, hey, this actually is what happened in that situation, that's fantastic, because I'm always reading stuff, trying to find out more. There are so many things we don't know, but we have still fun learning. The most recent stuff was you telling me, Billy D. Williams' son was Klaatu in California, and now I'm finding out maybe Harry Shearer did some side voices and stuff like that. You think you know everything about the things you like, and there's still things you find out, and that's what's fun. And I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to argue somebody, and fight them to the death.
I would say, to kind of wrap things up also, and this is something I mentioned before when we used to talk about collecting, when we did a couple of collecting shows, is that just like in collecting, it's supposed to be fun. I know that some people, collecting is a business, and there's no fun left of it in their lives. It's just a business. And I understand that because everybody has to make a living one way or the other. But for me, or at least for us, collecting has always been something that's fun. And if it's too much of a task and too much of a frustration, then Don't do it anymore. Same thing with fandom. Fandom is supposed to be something fun. It's the place you go to unwind from all the real things happening in the world. It's your happy place.
It's funny you mention that.
And when a person turns fandom into just, instead of a collection of things that you love, make it a collection of things that you hate, now you become a walking billboard of hate.
Yeah.
And who the hell wants to associate with somebody who's constantly 100% angry at something?
Yeah. And the Star
It's
Wars figure,
horrible.
I would say mostly I'm a Star Wars collector of the vintage stuff. And since I have it all, I don't know if I'm a collector anymore. I have a collection. As far as the new stuff, it really started getting depressing when you'd walk in a store and you'd see the same, common sitting on the shelf. And you knew it was the same one month after month because it would got more shelf worn or torn or dog-eared. And it would just be like, really? You've gotten nothing new, or you've gotten so few things in that they're already sold out by the time I get there? And I just wasn't enjoying it anymore, so I wasn't even looking anymore. And I gravitated more towards Legos because Star Wars Legos, and then expanding beyond that, and that was more fun, and it actually revitalized me for a number of years. And now I almost feel like, back to the REM situation, Lego is the #1 toy now as of this year anyway, and everybody's buying Legos. People are stealing Legos.
You're gonna have to start moving away from it.
They're scamming. They're making scams of Legos because it's easier to steal Legos, isn't it, than to actually steal money. And it's like, well, okay, when it gets to be depressing, I guess you got to move on from there. And that's kind of fun. And, I don't sell stuff. I don't think you're buying more than you're selling, that's for sure.
Oh, man. Well, I would like to thank James for joining me today on this very philosophical conversation, which is a little different than our usual.
We were both sitting in our underwear with our hands on our knees.
And our My Little Pony stuffed
with
animals
our
on our
elbows
laps.
on our knees and our hands on our chin.
On this whole fandom and what it's like to be a fanboy and how to not take fandom too far conversation. So until next time, we will see you here at GeekFest Rants. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
What's that film that you love?
What film?
The one about the fucking hairdresser, the space hairdresser and the cowboy. The guy's got a tinfoil pal and a pedal bin. His father's a robot and he's his sister. Lego. They're all made of Lego.
Star Wars.
That's the one, right. It's like that, okay. I'm gonna kill all the bad guys. And you'll be able to blow up the big...
The Death Star.
The Death Star thing.
Yes.
Then you can go and live happily ever after on the planet of the teddy bears.
They're Ewoks. It's a fantastic analogy. Well done.
I don't think I could go dressed up as a pony.
My God, this is a bunch of nerds.
F Mr. Spock. Han Solo's the man.